Okay, so pinch pots is where we are. I had some examples here. This is example number 1 or 5, depending on your perspective on where you start. But for me, this is the first one I picked up. Notice it has some holes in it. That's kind of a cool deal. It's actually 2 pinch pots. There's the first pinch pot here that we see, and then the foot or the bottom is another pinch pot that's been made for it. That's kind of a cool one. This is another pierced pinch pot. This one has a few more holes in it. So it's kind of like a basket, right? Rather than holding like some tea or something like that, it just kind of holds air and things that are a little bit more solid, which is kind of cool. It has another type of a foot on it. The edge is a little bit rough on those, which is kind of a cool deal, but it's fairly smooth all the way. Pretty thin too, on those. Another one, different sorts of foot on that one. This one has a real cracked rim on it. I kind of like the cracked rim look on these, so that's kind of where they are. This one has some pressed-in designs on it, just around the rim on trying to create a pinch pot. And so those are some examples of pinch pot construction, just pinching out a simple sort of a bowl shape on that. And so today we are going to do that. We're going to pinch out a bowl shape that we're working on. So how much clay do I need? So I need some clay. Now, you may remember last time that I just took a wet paper towel. Now this is still moist on that, and that's cool, but it's kept my clay really moist inside here. And so that was a good workable solution. That was a good thing. Okay, so I'm going to slice off. I need about a racquetball sized piece of clay. And so if I took a little chunk and I cut it off about like that, that's probably plenty of clay. I need to be able to just fit it in my hand, a round ball in my hand, on those like a tangerine or something, right? Is the size that we want. Where did I put that? That's in there. That's getting moist. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to seal this up so that keep it moist. That's important, because if it dries out, then we can't use it anymore. We have to recycle it, which we can do, but that's kind of eel. Okay, so now this one, let's just squish this into a ball. Okay, squish it into a ball shape. You can roll it around on your table if you want, whatever you think. If you can blend it and squish it, but I want a ball shape. And if you have seams or something like that, and that's bothersome, you can just blend it across. Just pull the clay across like that, blending the seam together. So it is a ball, a true ball. A sphere, I guess that's another term. But if it's rounded, that'll help us out with those. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of pinch and squeeze till we get it into a ball shape. So the goal is this: I want to be able to hold it in my hand. Now I have kind of small hands, so if you have smaller hands, obviously you can be using a smaller thing. If you have larger hands, you obviously can use more clay if you want with those. But this is probably enough. This is enough for what our purposes are. This will make a pretty good sized project on those. Okay. So I have a ball. Step number 1. Okay, step number 2 is I need to put a hole in here somewhere. And so you just take your natural tools that you have at your disposal and you squish and you poke a hole in it, kind of like that. Pretend it's an olive. Okay, pretend it's an olive and you're going to have a snack, because we all know that you're supposed to stick olives on your fingers before you eat them. That's kind of an unwritten law, it's just the way it is. And if you can put like ones on all 5, then you start right here and then eat this one, and eat this one. So kind of a deal. Now, some of you may have longer fingernails, and so when you're trying to stick this in here, it doesn't work very well. Anything you have, this is just one of the knife tools we have back over there. You could use a pencil or whatever. You can just jam that in if that's more helpful to you because your fingernails are a little bit longer. That's okay. But you want it more or less in the center of the sphere that we're working with, so that you can start out with your walls fairly even. Now this is I guess this is a functional sort of a thing. It is a vessel, right? We could put something in there and have it hold there. If we had a candlestick, maybe this would be a candle, It looks like it's not going to be a very good candle. It's going to fall over on us, so that's not a good deal. So it's not completely functional, but it is a vessel, right? The walls are about an inch thick on that, so maybe we hold like some kryptonite or something in there so it doesn't affect our ability to, have strength. Anyway, but so our goal now that we have our basic bolting is we just want to make it thinner. And there's a reason why we call this a pinch pot, because I'm just going to take my thumb, I'm going to stick it inside here like that, okay? And then I'm going to pinch gradually to make it thinner. I'm just going to rotate around, pinch, pinch, pinch. And notice it's starting to get thinner. That's a good deal. I'm going to use my other hand. I can use both hands on this one. And we're just going to gradually pinch it and make it thinner, rotating it. And so I'm just trying to find, I kind of feel where the thick spots are, and then just squeeze it, and then just slowly go around, making it thinner. That's why we call it a pinch pot, because it's made by pinching it. Tell me what your goal is, okay? So it's getting more and more functional. If cracks develop and you don't like that, you can just kind of blend them together on the rim there. So this is our goal right here. We want to make it about that thick. It's less than 1/4 of an inch. The golden rule in ceramics is 1/4 of an inch or thinner. And so that's what we want to have happen with this particular project. But since this is a smaller amount of clay, I can go even thinner. And so that's one thing you'll notice. And eventually we'll probably do the same sort of activity with this one. But we want it consistent all the way across, a consistent thickness. So that's our goal. So let's get after it here. I'm going to pinch and I'm going to make it thinner, making it, rotating it around little by little. Now you don't want to try and pinch it to that thickness all at once, because what happens is you inevitably get a real thin spot in one, real thin, and then real thick in another. And that makes it weak on that, makes the walls weak. And it also makes it so it doesn't look like you spend any time on it. Remember our goal we had at the very beginning when we were looking at artwork and talking about artwork. The one rule I have for this class is time invested, is I want you to invest time in your projects with those. And if I can see that you've done something like this where it's consistently thin, I know that takes a lot of time to do it, to gradually pinch it out so it's consistent. Also, I'm trying to make it so it's rounded, so it's kind of a hemisphere, half of a sphere, right? Half of a sphere, hemisphere, when I'm doing. And if I rotate it, it maintains that same shape. Now, if you're concerned about the rim as you make it, you can tap it like that, and that a lot of times will make it a consistent thickness with those. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be an even rim. I sacrifice some areas, and the rim is one of those areas that I sacrifice from time to time with those. Because I like that uneven look. And if you have control in other areas, you don't really need to worry about not having control in some of those other areas. Okay. Let's make it thinner. Now another thing you can do is you can stretch it a little bit as you're working with it. I'm just going and rotating, pinching it out, making it thinner here. But you can stretch it. What do I mean by that? Well, you have a limit on how far I can pinch, right? This is my limit right here. I can pinch this far because right now I can barely reach the bottom. So if it got any taller, I'd be up this side and I couldn't get down to the bottom because my hands, right? This is my pincher tool, and I only have that distance right here to work with. So you can stretch it. Let's see if we can see that happen. So if I'm sitting here like this and I push it out, there we can kind of see what's going on. You can kind of see areas where it gets pushed out. That's stretching it. And you can do that with this technique as well. It's kind of a stretch pot here. Let's see if we can see that again. There we go. Seeing that stretched and pushed out. That's how you can get down to the bottom. Now if you have those fingernails that I'm talking about and that makes it harder to stretch out the bottom, that's okay. You can use other tools on stretching that out as well. There's a guy who does pinch pots. He's a pinch pot guru sort of thing, and he'll use anywhere from 10 to 15 pounds of clay. That's like half of one of those big bags of clay. And for making his, he stretches them quite a bit. So it's technically not as much a pinch pot as it is a stretch pot. But you can do that as well. The other thing I want you to do is make sure you keep the rim or the lip fairly thick. I got that crack developing over there, but we'll blend it together. Right? It goes together. Because that's where you're going to be touching the particular thing. So if you're taking a drink out of it, this is where your lips are going to touch it. If you have sit down here and you have something inside of it, the rim is where it's going to be touching. So if it's really thin, it'll break. And so if we can keep this area here just a little bit thicker, that will be good for us. We like that. So I got about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little bit thicker. So I got to go thinner. Got to go thinner. Okay. And just gradually pinch that out. Other things you can do that are going to show control is if you blend the inside, smooth it with your thumb like this, just as you rotate around. That smooths out the bumps and makes it glassy smooth, so that the glazes will go in there and make it look nice and round. It shows time invested, shows a higher degree of quality if it doesn't have bumps and ripples on the inside. So that's another thing you can do with those. But thinner we go. It's a little thinner down here at the bottom. Oh, I still have it in the hemisphere shape, right? Half of a sphere. That's good. If you can make it continuous and flowing, it'll look better. And this is just the base idea. Another thing you can do, sometimes when people pinch, they pinch like this. They pinch it and rotate it out, and so their project kind of flanges out a little bit. But you can also pinch and kind of rotate it in. So as you pinch, so I'm squeezing here, you can squeeze straight like this, or you can kind of rotate when you pinch, and that a lot of times will make it a little bit taller. I didn't show the other guys that. So you guys are special. And so that makes your walls a little taller and a little stronger that way on doing that sort of rotation, so pulling it when you're pinching. I gotta go here. Let's smooth it out a little bit. And I'm just going to work on the rim a little bit, trying to make that a consistent thickness. And then down here, just below there, is also where I need to work down in this area. And now I'm just going to go along and try and pinch it and see if it's the same thickness in the various areas. So I have down here, rotating up the side, seeing if it's consistent. If there's a spot where it's a little thicker, I'm going to thin it out a little bit. You can see that the rim has a little bit more thickness to it. That's a good thing. This area is thicker here, so I gotta work on this area right in here a little bit more. Now, when we do the other pinch pots, okay, when we do our other pinch pots, you're going to do this exact same technique, this exact same pinching on these areas. So this is our demo for making a pinch pot. But we're going to add some other things to it. You know, I talked about decorations and I talked about pierced sort of things. We're going to make one that kind of looks like an animal. I didn't show one of those examples up here, but we're going to do that as well on these sort of things. But the basic construction, how do you make it, is what we're doing right here with this pinched pot. And like I said, just trying to make it smooth and consistent. There's a little bit of a thicker spot right there I can feel, so I'm smoothing that out. Most people, their failing is down here at the bottom of the project, is it gets thicker down there just because they can't reach that far on those. But just kind of feel it and see how thick it is and try and make it consistent. This is looking pretty good. I think I'm getting close to being done on that. Let's do a quick check. So it's round, that's good. As far as this area here, rounded like that. It's still hemispherical, if that's a word I just invented. And so in other words, it's a bowl shape, it's a hemisphere, that's good. As I'm looking at the thickness, it's pretty consistent, at least on the rim with those. Now I can go thinner, but I'm not. I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm to the point where I can actually do the next step. And that's where we're going to actually cut it in two, like this piece here. Because I want you to see if you were able to get the thickness, because a lot of times when you're feeling it like this, when you're squeezing the clay, you think it's a certain thickness, but you're not quite sure. And so we're going to, on this one, we're going to double check. As far as points for this one, if you do it, you get the points. This is not I'm not looking at quality, I'm not looking at the thickness. I am, as far as to let you know, hey, that's good. That's a good project. That's good. I like that. Nice thickness on those. And I'll let you know on those. But as far as grading on it, so if you get it a certain thickness, you get 5 points. If it's thicker than that, you're more than 1/4 of an inch, you get 3 points. If it's a 1/2 inch, you get 1 point. I'm not grading it like that. I'm just looking at it so to know that you've been able to, one, pinch it out, make it rounded, and see the thickness. Okay, here's the next step, and that involves the wire tool. This is what we're going to do to get it graded and turned in. I want you to take a wire tool, and there's just some sitting around on the tables. Now, the thing of the wire tool is this. It's fairly long and it's hard to utilize, so if you take it and have it so when you hold it, the handle is just here right at the end, right? And then you just take and you wrap it once around like this. Then you have an area that's about this big to use. That's a usable size. And I'm just going to take that and I'm going to slice it just in half. Now, if you don't happen to have a wire tool at your disposal, you could use a piece of fishing line or a piece of dental floss or something like that to cut it. Bingo, right in half like that. And so, let's see what we got. Let's see what we got. It's kind of like Christmas. And so, with the cut, I'm looking at the thickness right here, and it's pretty consistent. That's what I was after. Right through there, a nice consistent thickness. I could go thinner, right? This is my example. I could go thinner on that still, but it is 1/4 of an inch or thinner. Did I tell you guys why we do that? I may not have told you. I don't remember if I did. So let's say that I have this piece of clay and I take it and I start smushing it all together, and then folding and moving. There's a pretty good chance that I'm going to trap some air inside of that pinch pot, right? Or whatever piece of clay it is. And so if you have trapped air in there, you got this little air bubble that's staying inside that clay. And so when we go to heat it up, the air wants to expand. That's normal, right? Air expands when you heat it up. And so it's going to start to put pressure on that pot. And eventually the pressure is going to get so strong that it's going to blow apart. And so it'll explode. And so your projects will explode and fall apart if there's air trapped inside this wall. So if we pinch it out so thin that it's thinner than 1/4 of an inch, I'm pretty sure we will have squished out all the air bubbles. And so that's why we have the 1/4 of an inch rule, is if it can be 1/4 of an inch or thinner, you'll squish out all the air bubbles and it won't explode when you fire it. And that's it. And that's true of most of the projects you're going to be working on, is you're trying to get that 1/4 of an inch thickness or thinner so that they don't explode. Now, as far as a bowl or something this size, since it's smaller, you probably want it thinner. So if you have things that are really, really small, like remember this one, pretty thin on those walls, huh? If we compare just the thickness of the walls, and that's because it's smaller, so you can make it thinner. It makes it lighter. There's nothing worse than saying, oh, that looks really nice and delicate, and you go to pick it up, and it weighs a ton because it's so thick with those. In addition, if I was having some soup or something in here, I'm going to add weight by putting stuff into the bowl. And so if you have one that's heavy to begin with, and then you add more weight to it, it's just not comfortable. It's just too heavy for utilizing, and people won't want it to utilize. And you say, well, I don't want other people to want it. So, well, you won't want it as much because it'll be heavy, and it'll be your favorite because it's the first thing you made, right? But as you make more and more stuff, then it'll become less favorable for you because you'll have other stuff that's lighter and better in those areas. And so that's a little bit about the pinch pots. Okay, so what do I want you to do with this? I want you to take your two pieces. You can just set them like this. I want you to photograph them, ching ching, and photograph that so I can just see the cut edge right through here. And then I want you to upload it. The assignment is called Cut Pinch Pot on Canvas. And just upload the picture to that particular area. We'll make new pinch pots next class period, and we'll probably start out with this one with a decorated pinch pot, but that is the instruction on how to make the pinch pot. photograph it, upload it, you do it, you get the points. Pretty simple on that one. Now, if this clay is too dry, you have two options. One, you can take and you can put it back in your bag and wet it down a little bit. Or, if it's too dry, take it and put it into the recycling machine, and then I'll mush it all up together and make it back into perfectly workable clay. And so those are the options that you have as far as with this project. This is not a saving one, not a keeper, unless you wanted to keep it and fire it, write your name on, say, hey, look how thin I made it. You could do something like that if you want for your own purposes. And that's about it. That's making your pinch pots.